They are padded. They were commenting about our shirts, which everything has a story behind it, right? These shirts were made for us. We got to Freetown after a very long several flights, and one of the things that American teams do when they go to Sierra Leone is you visit the bishop's office because he's your host, I guess your official host. And we're sitting there, we're just chit-chatting, and a tailor comes in. And he says, "Oh, we need to fit you for shirts." And it's like, "Oh, well, okay." And so, he's got his stretching out how long your waist is. And they measure mine and go like this, and then he sticks out to about another 2 or 3 inches, and he nods, and it's like, I'm good. I'm okay with that. It's I like Roomy. Roomy's good, but they're padded shirts, and it was kind of their gift to us. I think in starting out, one of the things that we knew it was important, but I don't think we understood the significance of how big a deal dedicating the church and opening the church was for the people at a communal event for the whole town of Kabbalah, and also for the Methodist church there. The idea of starting a church from scratch and having it presented there, they had people from lots of places in the country come to celebrate it. All of the bishop's cabinet was there. The district superintendent was there. All of his administrative assistants for all the different ministry areas were there. So the service itself, the day itself, was a big deal. And of course, we got to be part of that. We were a pretty small part of it. So, Don, you're up.
Well, just a couple other notes on that. The tailor did not do the same thing for Taylor and I.
And I'll be able to wear my shirt several years from now.
I don't know what that means. But the other thing is we thought we were going to be kind of special, and then frankly there were probably 30 other shirts.
Yes, this is a common print.
By the time we had service on Sunday.
Not off the rack.
Okay. We came into Freetown, you can see over here, and of course Kabbalah's way up there. What is that, Dave? 200 miles? 175 miles or so?
Yeah.
The roads from Freetown to McKinney weren't bad, and that's primarily because the president of the company is from McKinney. Go figure, huh? From McKinney to Kabbalah, we bury people in holes as big as what they have in the middle of their roads. I mean, unbelievable. So let's start. Mark. Okay. Well, after we got there, we ended up out on the beach, and I'm not sure this is in the appropriate sequence yet. I don't think so. Try the. No, that. But I think beach is probably the first in the alpha sequence as opposed to the date.
While they're sifting it out, a little just itinerary stuff. We left Colorado Springs on Tuesday about 1 o'clock. On the trip over, we flew to Chicago, and then Chicago to Brussels, Belgium, and then Belgium to Freetown. So the first leg was, Springs to Chicago, not too bad. For those of you old Saturday Night Live fans, we ate in Chicago at do you remember the old cheeseburger place? They have one of those in the airport, so that was kind of fun. The flight from Chicago to Brussels was, an overnight deal. Taylor thought it was really cool to stay up all night because the flights that we went on had touch-tone movie screens. So every seat had a movie screen in front of it, which is, it's kind of like Netflix at your disposal. So he watched the Iron Man sequence, the whole trilogy of movies. Staying up all night when you're 14 is pretty cool. When you get to Brussels the next morning and you're waiting for the next leg of your flight, so it's, 8 or 9 hours, something like that. Brussels to Freetown's about the same length, about 8 hours. He slept the whole way. He thinks it's 20 minutes from Brussels to Freetown because that's the only time he was awake. You go right over the kind of outside edge of the coast of Africa. Flew over a little bit of the Sahara Desert, which you can look at those things on a map, but until you're peeking out the window, all you can see for as far as you can see is open space. There's just nothing there. It's really impressive. When we got to Freetown in the airport, we're really tired. We've basically flown or been in an airport for 30 some hours. It's just, there's no quick way to get to Freetown. We get off at the airport, and you walk down the steps there, and you walk across the tarmac and head into where they're going to check you in. Well, we're Americans. We're used to lining up for everything. There's got to be a line, right? And we're expecting somebody to say, line up here in an orderly manner. It's kind of just everybody hordes in and all for one, and I got to get to the front of the line. We were the last 3 people to go through the line. A little disoriented, we just, we'll go ahead. We're trying to be polite strangers, and they were all there. It was bedlam. It was chaotic. You're strangers in a strange land, which I think when you travel, that's it feels kind of scary because you don't know what's going on, but it's kind of one of the exciting things about traveling internationally too, is you don't know what's going on. All the people there were terrific. They were ready to go home too. It had been a long flight for them. So baggage claim was a bit of a just, sharpen your elbows and grab your bag, and you got to be willing to push in and move people out of the way with your hips. But it worked out well, and we got out of the airport in pretty good shape, and we were tired. That was in the Freetown airport.
Okay. We ended up at a place called the Kissy House, which is next to a hospital, a Methodist hospital. And this is one of the beds that, you notice the mosquito net. Next. We'll be hollering next a lot. Another one of the beds, just a simple bed. Whoops. Well, that's all right. This, frankly, this one might be out of sequence a bit. This is a bed at the orphanage. The orphanage that we sponsor, people here sponsor the kids. 3 to a bed on that. And then, by the way, 3 kids sleep in that. Next. Okay, here's the bishop's office. Not a bad place. Next. Another copy of that. Yep. Next. We went from the bishop's office to get some money out of the bank. We actually, when they talk about needing a wheelbarrow sometimes, that's, we had a stack, we had $1,000, so you had, 10 bills, right? We ended up with 2 stacks, probably a foot high, of bills. Their lowest denomination, but their highest denomination is 10,000 Leones, which is approximately $2.10. So, you have a stack of 5,000 and a stack of 10,000 Leones. That's $1 and $2. So,
and when you go to buy gas, when you buy fuel, and they say, well, we need 500,000 Leones, and you're going, oh my God, you give them like 4 inches of money. You just say here, and that, but when you start doing the math, when you calculate in your brain, it's like, well, it's not American currency. It makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's a little shocking when you first get there.
So we went from the bank, we went to the big market, where there's a place where you can buy some gifts, trinkets and such. And this is one of the vendors that was there. In fact, this guy got some of my business, because the first thing he did is he came up and he said, I'm going to give you a free necklace. It was only after we got on the plane on the way back that I realized this thing's busted. It's broken. He wasn't going to get anything for it anyway, but he thought he was doing me a big favor. And of course I bit. What the heck? He got some of my business. Next, Mark? Well, we'll just go with
there
it.
We go.
Oh, there's another one. Dave's...
One of the things we wanted to bring back was a drum. We were a musical family, so we had some folks in mind. We wanted to get a drum for Taylor's band teacher, and we got that. And I didn't try to negotiate the price. I had our driver negotiate the price, and I think was Abu with us when we went to the market?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's I want a drum. Make sure I don't get ripped off, and then let it go from there. Americans, we just look at the price, and that's what the price is. In most foreign countries, the price is always a movable number. It's what we all decide we can live with. And I'm not very good at negotiating that way, so I was pleased with the deal.
And these guys are offended if you don't.
Yeah, it's almost like, what do you need?
One of them said, gave me a price, and I said, no, that's too much. Well, give me, what do you want? I said, no, that's way too much. So I gave him a very low price. He came down. I stayed with the low price. And he said, no, that's not the way it's done.
Yeah.
You got to come up.
Foreigners, what are we going to do with these people?
Next,
Americans.
Next.
Sheesh. A lot of handicraft, a lot of wood carvings, painting, a lot of artistic things at the big market.
Well, actually, no. This
Don got in a little legal trouble when we were in Freetown. So, we won't really spend a lot of time with that. He's home, safe.
Actually, if we get back to that picture, that's what they used to hammer rocks and make pebbles out of them. And if you note that hammer, it was about the size of the end of a baseball bat. Not even that big. Terrible. You see that little thing? That's what they're hammering it with. Of course, we've got this great big stuff. Okay, next, Mark. Okay, the fish. We went to the beach, and one of the things we saw, they were bringing in fish, and it immediately we all said, "Wow, that's like Peter and James and the boys, Andrew, bringing in fish." It was the same type of thing, and they got a nice catch, and the people were coming down. I'll buy that one. Take it out of the net, bring it home.
Yeah, we had a guy walk right up to the restaurant that was right on the edge of the beach and just walk it right in, and I'm sure he ate it for supper, fillet it and got
This
it.
is just some parts of the net, large nets. This is a typical street. You'll note the booths to sell things, and the thing that I found fascinating was all the garbage. These people are walking, and
you can kind of see it by the curb at the curb of the street
anything.
there. Yep.
Nobody picks up anything.
So in my way of thinking, they don't have a lot of, like we would think of as stores. I mean, they have some, but they don't have a lot of stores. They have a lot of open booths where all you really need is a roof and your material, and you can close it down. Especially the further outside the city you get, that's the way most of the marketplaces are. They're just open booths.
Yeah. This is a marketplace, but these ladies are just selling clothes they've dumped in the middle of the dirt. Next, there's another street in
Taxis.
Freetown.
Yep.
Next. Well, this is the orphanage. This is a picture of the entrance to the orphanage.
When we first started working with John and Elaine, the pictures you guys probably have from McKinney, Abu's orphanage was in McKinney. And then it moved to Waterloo as kind of an area outside of Freetown. And when I went in 2011, I had a chance to go to the McKinney orphanage, and it was tiny. It was not a great place. I mean, it's better than nothing, but it's not a great place. This orphanage, as far as a home, is really pretty nice. Well, you'll see some pictures of it here.
Yeah.
It looks good. It's clean.
Yeah, it's clean. Next, Mark. Okay.
So
Okay.
that's our.
Well, we're back to the beach.
back to the beach.
Just a couple girls walking on the beach. You can see they're carrying things on their head. This is
Freetown.
back in Freetown, yeah. Well, this is a place that we stayed, the Kissy guest house, just the entrance to it. And we had to go through some iron gates, and we were locked in at night. We had a key to get out, but...
The Kissy Hospital is a United Methodist hospital, and so one of the things the bishop wants to do is keep all the business in the family. So if you have a Methodist mission team come over, why wouldn't you stay at the Methodist guest house? It's by the hospital. That makes a lot of sense. Keep the money in the family there.
This is a shot of Freetown from way above. We went up into the hills, up above the American Embassy. And this is actually the location is where they're hoping to get a theological college going.
Yep.
So it's just a shot. Next. Oh, our buddy Malcolm, who was our host at the Kissy House. Character and a half. Next. Here's a picture of Dave with one of the orphans. We have quite a few pictures of Dave with the orphans. We made sure we got one of each one. So you can run through these.
And you know, the kids in the orphanage, they have grown up with us.
Yep.
Most of the teenagers were probably, you know, little kids when we first, or at least when I first started to know them. That's been 7, 8 years now. So, you know, they've gone from 6, 7, 8 years old to now the older kids are teenagers. They're probably in, you know, mid-secondary school, somewhere in there. So they're becoming, you know, young men and women.
Mm-hmm. Some of you may see the young child you're sponsoring here.
Abu's orphanage, Abu's brother Emmanuel really runs the orphanage. I think he's the day-to-day manager of it, and they have a house mom. I think you'll see her pretty soon here. But they said their biggest need is food. The educational needs have been taken care of. That's the scholarships that, like we do for we sponsor the kids in that. But, you know, some things are pretty universal. The older the kids get, the more they eat. The more they eat, the more money it costs, right? And you've got a house full of either teenagers or kind of elementary school kids. Emmanuel said their monthly cost is around $600. And he said, you know, it's just tough. That's their number one, because we asked him, I said, well, you know, do you have things you really need? And he said food, and just flat out, no hesitation. He's hoping that we can recruit, you know, 30 people to donate $20 a month, or you know, some kind of way to make that work. And it's something that we can work on for sure.
I think there's a dozen or so.
Yeah, about 12.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is a picture of here's back to the orphanage. This is a picture of the theological school that the bishop is, you know, one of his major projects coming up.
One of the issues the church has, and of course I was a little more dialed into this than maybe a lot of people would be, most of the pastors have only have a BA. They've gone to Bible college or theological studies, that kind of thing. Ordained people in our system have a master's of divinity. That's baseline theological training. And it's one of the things the bishop wants to continue to increase. The program that I go to in the summer is an international program, and I said, well, we look for international students. We would love to have somebody from Sierra Leone come and be part of the Beeson program. But the baseline for doctorate studies is a master's degree. He said, well, we really only have probably 2 or 3 people that would qualify out of the whole country. And so he believes, and I think rightfully so, that if they could get that next level of training, that would only strengthen the church, because then the training for the lay people would be better, just continue to ripple out. So that's one of the bishop's hopes, is to kind of start their own. If any of you are familiar with Africa University, the Methodists have sponsored that for quite a few years now. He's hoping to kind of create his own Africa University for a theological school in Sierra Leone. The bishop, he was described, we think he's in his 50s, and when you're a bishop for life. He's described as being very ambitious. He has a lot of vision, the one district superintendent said. So I'm kind of glad we're working with a man who's, you know, his hopes maybe are beyond his reach, but he's working and he's extending and hoping to push them a little farther. I think in the long run it'll pay off.
This is another of the vendors in that marketplace. This is the rock pile that these guys were making little pebbles out of big ones. Picture of the kids again. The kid in yellow was kind of the lead guy. When we got there, the first thing they did was introduce themselves, tell us what they wanted to do with the rest of their lives. Had a Bible verse for us, and they all joined in on a song to us. So it was a neat little program. Notice the dog on the left. Dogs everywhere there.
You know, and our gifts, the gifts that you all provided, we took some of that over from under the tree, the Christmas tree. Mark, you can click through the pictures of the kids pretty quick. I think we have quite a few pictures. Yeah. We only had one boy who said his favorite Bible verse was Jesus wept. So, that's pretty good. Most of the kids had something a little more substantial than that. It wasn't that little guy either. It was an older guy.
He had a nice long verse.
I think it might have been him.
Might have been this one, yeah.
And you can kind of see beyond looking at the kids, the living room that they're in, tile floor. It's got a lot of space to it. It's roomy. They have, I think, 4 bedrooms, so they have to share a bed, but they have room. They have furniture. They have a well outside the house, so they have clean water. They have a little cooking area. I wouldn't call it a kitchen, but it's an area where they cook. And there you can see the mama there. She's kind of got her pink outfit on.
This kid's got the nicest eyes.
That's your guy.
He's also got a great smile.
He's also
great smile.
Great sponsors, too.
He's the one Kathy and I sponsor.
There she is.
Yep. House mom.
House mom.
And one of the beds, 3 kids per bed, basically. Some of those kids were pretty big.
Yeah.
So you can imagine 3 per bed.
The scholarships we provide and all the support that we provide them. When we talk about the idea of transforming the world, in a country like Sierra Leone where most of the population has a little education but not a lot, education is their step up in the world. It can separate them from everyone else, and if they can go to secondary school or even maybe beyond, college will probably be out of reach for most of the kids, but still the idea of completing secondary school, that's a huge deal. I don't think we can underestimate that. We kind of take that for granted, that every kid's going to finish high school. Most kids do, but over there, most kids don't. And so to have kids who are orphans finish secondary school and are doing well is a real advantage to them. It's a big step up.
This is Emmanuel Conte just unloading some rice that was bought. They do have supplemental food. This is in their backyard.
My son learned that bananas grow on trees. They don't grow in the grocery store. Imagine that. There's the well.
Yeah, they have a well, and I think it's more of as much a community well as it is just for them.
Yeah, the idea of like a private well is just something I think in their society, they just look at you and go, what do you mean? That we would be the only people to use this well. It's for anybody who wants to use it. They have a little garden, so they supplement some of their dietary things by doing that. But the well is a source of clean water for bathing and cooking and drinking and all those things. There you can see the whole group.
Mm-hmm.
They moved into the house there in 2011. The team I went with in 2011, they were just putting the finishing touches on the house when we were there, and we didn't stay very long. It was kind of funny. We're guests, and they have some guests come by every now and then, the mission teams and that. And there's always that sense of, how when you're company with somebody's house and they're glad that you came, but they're really kind of, it's like, well, thanks for stopping by. We'll see you on the way back. I think that once we left, the kids got to see what were in the bags. And so they kind of know it's as soon as you guys leave, we can explore the gifts that you brought us. So thanks for stopping by. We'll see you later. On your way. That's the Atlantic Ocean from their side of it.
This is the boat that these guys were fishing in.
For those of you who are beach people, you feel really small standing on the beach. When you look out, all you can see is the water.
You'll notice there's not very many people, and it's not because we tried to avoid people in taking these pictures. There weren't very many people.
No,
Nobody took advantage of the beach.
Yeah. And we were there midweek too. They said on the weekends the beach is pretty full, but we were there in midweek.
Now we've got some pictures of just some folks, I think.
After Freetown, and we hit the orphanage on the way out of Freetown, and Waterloo. Then it was to McKinney, where we stopped and just kind of checked in with the district superintendent, and on to Kabbalah.
This is Abu. He's pretty instrumental in what the bishop is doing. And I was told I had to wear a sports coat to this, so I brought one, kind of with the intent I wasn't going to bring it home. And then we got these to wear to the service. This fellow needed some clothes to wear. So you
sacrificially gave him your necktie and your sports coat. Servants all, Don.
I was trying to give the necktie to Dave, and he wouldn't accept it.
I'll wear my robe, thank you.
You can run through these pretty quick, I think, Mark. A lot of pictures of people.
So, the bishop, of course, you can see on the right here. The man in the wheelchair was the architect of the church. So he had a very kind of prominent role. He got to speak at the service and that kind of thing. In Kabbalah, we got to Kabbalah on Friday, kind of Friday afternoon. And, of course, Sunday was worship service, so we had basically a Saturday to see the people we needed to see because we were coming home Monday. So one of the places we went to is the School for the Blind, and that's what some of these pictures are. In Kabbalah, they have the School for the Blind. They have dormitories there, so the students stay on site. The dormitories were built, I believe, by a German NGO. And, of course, you see all the mosquito nets there, too. This is the church, just kids from the church. You can see they're setting up. This is a Saturday morning picture. I love their colors. The women are fashionable. The men, they wear slacks and shirts. And the ladies, even in their everyday wear, they'll wear like the lady on the side there. You can see she's got a beautiful headdress on, and the lady in the red there in more of the background. It's not uncommon. I mean, that's their Sunday go to meeting, dress, but it's not uncommon to see people wear that kind of clothing just in their everyday wear. I didn't know what else to do, so I just stood at the front door and greeted people. It's all I know how to do on Sunday morning. Of course, we were there really early. Church is supposed to start at 10. They said get there at 9. We show up at 8:30, and we don't start till 11. So a lot of downtime. I might as well greet people as they're coming in. It's what I know how to do.
The guy on the right here was our driver. He was a character, to say the least.
Well, one of the questions people always ask is, did you feel safe when you were over there, or did you feel like, you better watch your back? I always felt safe except when we were driving. A lot of the roads are kind of 1.5 lane roads, and there is no middle stripe. And when you're turning the corner, you get on the inside lane and just start honking your horn, and whoever's coming around the corner better get out of the way. If you pass and honk your horn. If there are people walking by, they get out of the way. Most people walk there. And the people who drive, I think they have some kind of driving school, but I think if you can buy a car and you can figure out how to make it go, get going. You see a lot of motorcycles over there. One of the folks told us that motorcycles, as far as like taxis, are a very growing industry, because if people are going to walk everywhere, they can hire a taxi ride, drive across town, pay them 2,000 Leones, which is 50 cents or something like that. Yeah. And we saw a lot of people come to church through the motorcycles.
Question.
Yeah.
They're all mixed up now.
Yep. Actually, didn't go on to the lines. As Dave said, church didn't start till actually 11:20 or something like that. We got there. We were the first ones there. Our first clue should have been when we left our guest house. One of the bishops' entourage said, "Well, we're going to go out for breakfast, and then we're going to come." So that should have been our first clue that time wasn't particularly concerning thing. About 11 o'clock, we heard this noise, and one of the guys said, "Well, that's the kids from the Heritage School coming. Once they get here, then we can have church. Here's the kids from Heritage School coming. Blew us away.
You can see they're as far back on the road as you can, kind of where that yellowish house is in the far background. They're all the way back. And they're walking from all over to come to celebrate. This is a big deal. One of the things is it's a United Methodist church, and they have students at the United Methodist School. This is our place, even if they probably won't go to church there. So they really rolled out.
Yeah. Actually, a good number of these kids are Muslim, right?
Yeah, I guess at least half probably, yeah. They have a band. You can see the people in the band have got some blue uniforms on there in the center.
Yeah.
Very musical people. They love to sing. They love music. You'll hear people singing while they work. So the kids have had a good time with that.
One of the interesting things about the singing, we get real concerned sometimes about the quality. And if it doesn't sound really, really good, then we wonder, was that person doing singing in public? These guys don't care. They really don't care. They enjoy singing, enjoy the celebration, and make a noise.
They'd switch instrumentalists right in the middle of the song. I saw one guy, they just traded drummers right in the middle of the chorus part. And they just, they're just all playing. The guy who was our driver, he'd never been to Kabbalah before. He was in the praise band. All he did was kind of rehearse about half an hour before the service. Hey, I'm good to go. You just, it's kind of like jazz musicians. Just give me the beat and I'll fill it in as I go. And if I screw it up, we'll just keep going. That didn't, not a worry to them.
A little story on this guy, and hopefully we got the picture. That's not his house. That guy was the caretaker of the school. He earned 100,000 leones a month. It's an impressive number. Converted, 23 bucks.
That's his home.
That's his house. That's just in front of the school. That's probably, the distance is from here to Dave's office away from the school. That's where he lives with his 5 children. His wife decided she'd had enough. She left him.
Yeah.
This guy is Emmanuel. He's head of the amputee group there. You can see his right hand, it's on your left, has been chopped off.
Sierra Leone went through a period of civil war, almost a decade. And so as a country, they're coming out of their civil war period. They're in kind of a reconstruction time where they're rebuilding their society. A lot of their infrastructure was destroyed, buildings and roads and those kinds of things. Well, one of the tactics that the invaders, the terrorists would use, was they'd come in to terrorize people and cut a limb off as intimidation and dehumanizing a lot of the soldiers. As part of the settlement of the peace, the amputee folks were promised by the government a place to live and land and those kinds of things. The man who was in that last picture was kind of the community leader, spokesman person, and he was saying, well, we really haven't received what we were promised, and we're hoping that you can speak for us because they've just kind of ignored us. When I first heard amputee camp, I always think of camp like behind barbed wire and like that. It's really like a neighborhood in the town where they've been given like an area of the town to live in. One of Taylor's cross-cultural moments. So we get out of the car, and we were actually dropping a guy off that was driving with us, and we dropped him off there, and the folks start coming out, and they're really friendly, and they're waiting for us. They come. The guy walks up, just sticks his stump right out there. It's like, hey, good to see you. And Taylor grabs his stump, and his eyes went, and he did really well. He shook his hand, smiled, and did that. But nothing could prepare you for one of those kind of moments where, that guy doesn't have either hand, and you can see the guy in the purple there. And that's, there's a graciousness that comes with that of you just roll along with it and never let them see you sweat, I guess. But those kinds of things, that's their, I would have thought they would have shook with their left hand, but culturally that's not really acceptable either. So, you have what you have.
This is Pastor Daniel coming to church.
He's the guy with the clock.
He's the pastor of the church. He came in about 10:30. Of course, service is supposed to be at 10. That's what the program said. But that's how he got to church.
And the man behind him, see, like the style of shirt, we're stylish people in Sierra Leone. You probably didn't know that. His name is Peacemaker. He's one of the main leaders of the community, and he runs the clinic. Check me if I'm wrong. Is he a physician at the clinic? Do you guys know?
He's like a PA, a physician assistant.
He's not a medical doctor, but he's kind of... A lot of the things in Sierra Leone are communal. It's relational. He knows everybody. I mean, all you have to do is say, I'm a friend of Peacemakers, and they go, hey, all right, he's my second cousin. He knows everybody. He's like the mayor of the town in some ways. Really good guy. His sister, Fina, visited here, I don't know, it's been a while, maybe a couple years ago, 2 years ago. She works in the clinic as a nurse, and his other sister is an adopted daughter of Hope and Les Law. So if you've met the Laws before, her name's Dorcas. So that's the kind of family connection between the three of them. There's the clinic right there.
This is the entrance to the clinic.
The Narshara Clinic.
Yep.
Kabbalah, if you noticed on the map, is very far removed. It's way up in the north part of, probably the more isolated part of Sierra Leone. So the idea of having a medical clinic with this much good equipment and well-trained people and a high level of experience is a huge, huge deal for them. One of the guys said, this is nicer than the hospitals in Freetown. So it's one of those hidden gems, it's just kind of out there and pretty far removed from the city. They've done great work there.
This is Peacemaker's office. It's also where they keep all the drugs. And I think, and you can see they don't have a big supply. But I think he's kind of the chief dispenser of the drugs, too. This is the inside, or underneath the inside. It's kind of the waiting area.
Yeah, that's where the Methodists
clinic
used to meet before the church. They just met there in the kind of the clinic waiting area there.
Just an examining room. Some beds for the ladies that are coming in to have babies.
Their infant mortality rate is about 40%. At the Narshara Clinic, it's almost zero over the years. Life-saving ministry. The quilts help. The birthing kits help. One of the young men who went on the trip in 2011 did for a service project. He raised the money to buy an ambulance for them and figured out how to get it from the U.S. to, I think he got it from Denver all the way over there. We think it's hard shipping Bibles over there. Try shipping an ambulance over there. But he did. He raised money and worked with some service clubs and that kind of deal. And you don't think too much about that. You think, well, an ambulance. Think about if you're a pregnant woman and you live 7 miles from the clinic. You live out in the wilderness. You got to walk 7 miles to get there, maybe wait all day, and then walk home. And what if you have an emergency? With the ambulance, they can drive out, pick you up, bring you back, and we just take those things for granted. But there, it's a huge deal to have an ambulance.
That picture before was their ultrasound machine. That's their pride and joy. They've had it a few years, and they haven't had a breakdown yet.
So on Saturday, we visited the church.
Mark, let me...
We visited the church and we went to the clinic. Well, we stayed in an area. They have a guest house in the clinic kind of compound. So we were there. We went to the amputee camp. We visited the secondary school. The new primary school they've built is probably 10 yards from the church. So it's really just all one kind of, if you think, area. It will open in September. The primary school will. You'll see pictures of it when we get to the Sunday morning service. We went to the amputee camp. We visited Heritage School. We called on the principal. The secondary school there has the highest test scores in their district for 2 years in a row. That's a really big deal. 1 year, you might have got lucky or whatever. 2 years, the school is being kind of hailed as one of those, we need to go there and see what they're doing. One of the advantages the kids at the Heritage School have is they can go to the clinic and study at night because the clinic has an electric source. They have a solar area there where they can generate power. You think about it, 2 or 3 extra hours of studying 5 nights a week, every week. That's a lot of extra time to learn. So the kids are doing very well in the school. The bishop told a story. Yeah, go ahead. They do. They teach English as one of their, I guess, core classes or part of the curriculum.
Yeah.
Sierra Leone, there's English speakers. They kind of have dialects, a lot of dialects there. They thought I was a fast English speaker. So when I preached, I had a translator. And it was kind of funny preaching because I'd say something and then he'd just repeat what I said. And then there were other times he had to explain it. So, the people who have been, the kids speak pretty good English, and they speak probably several other dialects. So, that's kind of common. I think of it this way. I had to speed up my listening when I was there, because if you are listening to them speak and you start to listen faster, you can pick up more of what they're saying. If you've ever been like in Cajun country or in the Caribbean, it's like it kind of sounds like English, because a little bit of Creole, that kind of deal, that'll work. Hey, we're at the church.
Okay, we've got a little problem with the sequence of pictures, so I'm going to talk from back here and put up some pictures see if we can get a little sequence. Here's the road to the church.
Church on the hill, they call it.
Yeah, and you can see that house on the left. That's a family of probably 8 or 9 people.
Livestock. That's pretty common, livestock in their home.
It's
or
cool.
outside their home.
The front of the church. We got there Saturday morning. We decided Saturday morning we got up and said, well, we got a free day. Let's go to the church first. And we saw an empty shell.
That was Saturday morning.
This was Saturday morning. Yeah.
When you saw the church for the first time, what went through your head?
Frankly, what went through my head was they did good.
Yeah.
They really did good.
Yep.
And then they got inside and I said, wow, how are we going to have a church service here tomorrow morning?
There was a man who worked in the bishop's office, an American. His name is Kip. His wife is a clergy member, and Kip is a special projects manager for the bishop. I don't know what his title is, but that's what he does. And part of his job is to travel all over Sierra Leone and manage the Methodist projects. And they've traveled in Africa to several countries, and he said it's one of the nicest churches in Africa he's ever seen. And I don't think he was just being nice either. He sincerely said that. It's roomy, it's clean, it's well lit, got a lot of windows. Of course, it's brand new, so it looks nice. The paint looks good and that kind of deal. But he was just really impressed by it. It has side doors. That's one of the side doors there. You can kind of see out the doors and kind of overlook the city of Kabbalah there. That's a good question. What was my first thought? Cross and Flame always looks good. Somebody said that the other day. It's like coming home. Very connected, very proud, I think, was that. They did it. And two, I hope this doesn't sound odd, but in some ways, raising the money was the easy part. I didn't make any of the bricks. I didn't clear the ground. I didn't do the plans. I wrote a check. And we all helped. We were part of that process. I felt like we were part of how it all fit together. And it's kind of fun when you're not the whole project. You're a piece of the project. Then when you see it all fit together, it's like, wow, they did a great job. Very pleased with it.
As I said, this was Saturday morning. The cross and the flame are there, but there's no stenciling on it at all. The next day, well, we'll see one shortly. The next day, they'll have stenciling across that and other things. This was the only piece in the church when we got there Saturday morning.
So the pulpit's up 2 steps, and then there are 2 more steps to step up into the pulpit. I'm this giant with a black robe looking down on the people this way. It was really odd to preach because, I'm more conversational that way, and it was a really good experience. Lots of light.
Yeah, this is a building that's on the property of the church. It had been burned out basically in the Civil War. And the bishop has the project to make that a parsonage. Half of his staff says they can work with that, and the other half says knock it all down and start all over again. So he has a decision to make, but frankly, it will be his decision. Nobody else is going to make that decision.
It's very important the pastor is close to the church. He lives pretty far away now, maybe 20 minutes away. And they're hoping that if the pastor can be on site, that he can manage the church and the primary school because it's all just kind of right there together.
These ladies were there Saturday morning. They started unloading things, pews and just whatever we needed. And these ladies were there. We thought initially they were just folks that had come in to help. They're part of the bishop's staff, actually. And they came
From Freetown.
Yeah, from Freetown. And they came to dress the church. That's the term they used, which was just, it hit both Dave and I as a, wow, that's really a nice phrase to use. They were dressing the church. Let's see. The next morning, we got there early, as we said, Sunday morning. We were the first ones there. And this is what the church looked like. They had the pews, the chairs, the flowers in the windows.
Taylor thought he got a pretty good deal because he was sitting in one of the chairs instead of on one of the pews. Flat bench, no pads.
Yeah. Dave wondering where to put that.
Yeah.
His robe.
Where to put the robe. Okay, let's see.
The Kabbalah Church has been around for, I think, 3 or 4 years. I'm not for sure about that, but it's what we'd call a church plant. They're starting out, and their average attendance on Sundays probably around 30, I think Pastor Daniel said. But, of course, they've been meeting in the clinic, and they really feel like the church is going to help them establish their presence there, especially with the primary school being there. The church will become more and more a part of the process. There you can see the stenciling. That's above where the altar area is. So they were working on that Saturday morning.
Saturday, they had a fellow sitting outside cutting paper. And this is what he put on the inside. And you see the flag draped. Those are the colors of the flag of Sierra Leone: green, white, and blue. Okay. Yeah. They put this up outside the church to just to have some outside shade and coverage. And it was well needed Sunday.
Overflow seating for the service, and
Yeah.
afterwards the people could sit outside underneath it and eat and do those kinds of things.
Because I can bring the other slideshow back up just like that.
Okay.
I think pretty good. They have a sense. Operation Classroom has been sending teams to Kabbalah for quite a while now. 10 years maybe, just a guess. So they're used to having Americans come, and Americans come from Colorado, and also they have groups from Minnesota that come. The Minnesota group did the primary school. So they're familiar. Some of the folks from Kabbalah have actually been to the States, like Peacemaker. We ate lunch at the Hen House. He was here in Colorado, and he came down just to visit and say hello. And So they're familiar with Colorado as much as you can be. I would guess most of the folks who aren't Methodists or don't have a connection with the clinic, have a little bit. But most of the folks who are Methodists or at the clinic have a pretty good idea of Colorado.
People are starting to come to the church now. This little girl was one of the first. Next. Girl with her mother. Next. Let's go back to that one for there. Yeah.
There you can see a kind of another view of the parsonage back there in the background.
Let's see.
Parsonage to be.
Yeah, we did that. Oh, we'll go too far. Let's go ahead down here or something. Yeah. That's the graduates, I believe, of Heritage that went on to the next school.
And if you can see real closely where the cross and flame is, you can see the name of the church is stenciled. You can't really see the letters too well, but up there above that. So they did that on Saturday.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Some kids. Let's go down to the next.
Our Bibles arrived on Saturday in the truck that the furniture came in, so they were starting to unload those. That was kind of fun. I don't know how they're going to distribute them. I'm not too worried about that, but it was fun to see that they did arrive. They were going to store them in one of the storerooms. Children everywhere. Very young population. That's not uncommon in underdeveloped countries. Probably 50% of the population is in children or young adults. The other thing you have to consider is if your average life expectancy is 40 years old, if you're 20 years old, you're middle age. That's just the way it is. I think that will rise as medical care gets better and, as the war statistics kind of phase their way out, that the generations will last longer. But a lot of young adults, it's one of the challenges they have, kind of how are we going to provide work for all of these people who are going to need work in the next 10 years? What are they going to do, and what kind of jobs will they have, and how can we educate them? And that's challenges for a lot of countries like Sierra Leone.
This one, it's kind of cute. When I saw this picture the other day putting this thing together, this Balan Sama, I believe his name is, he was the host, if you will, at the Sarah Clinic Guest House. And he wanted his picture taken with these two young ladies from the school. And I couldn't help but note he has great taste. These are two of the cutest gals.
I've also noticed a lot of those young guys that own motorcycles, they usually have a girl on the back of them. So again, some things kind of translate across culture.
Yeah.
It's not so much they're trying to make a living. I think they're trying to impress the ladies. So, it's all right. Yeah, he's a great kid. This is after the worship service. You can see the primary school in the background there. It's kind of a rectangular shaped building.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Do you have pictures of the service? Is that where you're going next?
That's where we're going.
Okay.
That's where we're going next, yeah.
The worship service, just to give you a little framework of what you're going to be seeing, the worship service was a worship service, but it's also a dedication and it's a communal event. So the Paramount Chief was invited. He's like I guess he'd be comparable to like a governor. He's the caretaker of the land. He's the trustee of all the land. He gave the Methodists all the land that the building of the church and the school is on, and he's a dignitary. So he got to talk a lot, and that was okay. He talked longer than I did. He's not in that picture. You can see the bishop there with the white robe and the kind of gold and white stole, and then members of the bishop's staff are the two gentlemen there with the purple stoles on and the white robes, and another clergy member is there. They had clergy member come from Freetown, which, that's a pretty good drive for just a Sunday morning service, and you turn around and head home. So a big deal as far as the church goes.
Yeah, the picture before was the start of the service finally now, at 11:20. And here Dave is Dave was asked to cut the ribbon to open the doors.
The gentleman with the brown suit on, you can see him to what's my right, bald-headed guy with a brown suit. That's the paramount chief. So they asked me to cut the ribbon, and it's all great. And they said, well, come cut the ribbon. They hand me the scissors, and I'm, just jump right in. I've been waiting a long time to do this. As soon as I start to cut it, they go, wait. And they all kind of rush in. It's like, did I do something wrong? I screwed up the one thing I'm supposed to do right. And they said, well, we got to get pictures of this. So everybody kind of had I'm not used to being a dignitary, right? It's like you got to pose for the photo op. And there's the paramount chief right there, the man on the right, and then the other paramount chief is the man on the left. He had a captive audience, and he was a politician, so, he talked for forever.
This is just a typical picture, if you will, of the crowd that was there. One of the interesting things, the night before, Dave and I were looking at the gifts that we had brought to give away to the paramount chief and a few others. We had 22 or 23 pins that Shara had given us to give to the people of the congregation. And we were thinking, well, we probably don't want to pass those out to the people of the congregation. We probably give them to Pastor Daniel and let him do it later. We were thinking in terms of 20, 30, 40 people, and we were going to be able to identify them. There were probably 400 people at this service.
You can see all the kids standing up along by the windows and kind of the back door there.
I ended up going outside for a couple minutes during the service, and there were probably 100 people outside. Couldn't get in.
You might be able to notice Kip in the crowd there, the American man who I said made the comment about the church. One of the odd things about traveling to Sierra Leone, and it was a little better the second time, you're one of the few white people there. And, I'm a middle-class white kid from Kansas. There weren't any people of color in my whole county as a kid growing up. We just lived in out in rural Kansas. So I never felt like a stranger, but, when you're identified as the little kids would say, hello, white man, hello, you're kind of an oddity there. And they were really nice about it, but you look different, and that's okay. There's another picture of Kip.
Here's a picture of some of the kids trying to get into the church. And they wouldn't, they ended up kind of inching their way in.
Yeah.
They had a lady in the church that wanted to shush them back out, and they would for a few minutes, but then they come back in.
And notice the girl in the blue in the background. See how she's got her stuff stacked on her head? Everywhere. You don't see people carry things in their hands. No. They just put it on their head. And I never see them spill anything either. They're just straight as an arrow.
And the interesting thing is, she's there. She's selling something.
Oh yeah, she's.
They had
working the crowd.
Oh gee, they had 8 or 10 vendors out in the entryway, if you will, or the entrance of the church, selling bread and selling ice.
Yeah,
and,
peanuts or
things.
whatever it happens to be. Yeah. And a gorgeous view. You can see way in the background the view of the hills. Kabbalah is mountain country for them, so a lot of hills in that area.
About 2/3 or half this size here? About 2/3 this size.
Yeah, 2/3 this size, yeah. It's a little deeper than ours, but it's not quite as wide.
One of the interesting things when they took up offerings, it took 45 minutes to take an offering. I was hoping Bob would be here and see if he could relate to that.
Yeah. Finance committee is going to talk about that tomorrow at our meeting.
They took, I think it was 6 offerings.
Yeah.
And what would happen is they would take a plate and put it up, which would be just in front of Dave here, and then have a group come up and perform. This happened to be the group of kids from the school, and they would have, if that moved you, you would walk up and place an offering in the plate. If that didn't move you, they'd have another group, and they'd try to move you that way.
And it all went to the church, so it wasn't like, the street musician who puts his case out there and collects it and goes buy a cup of coffee. They had at least 6 songs.
And in fact, one of the songs was written the night before by our driver, who had never been in the church before. He'd never been in Kabbalah before, but he wrote a song, and he got a group up there and performed that song. It was interesting. 45 minutes later, we went on to another part of the service.
So you can see the choir is sitting, if you'd extend the picture out to your right, the choir sat over there. There was an area of clergy. You can see the couple of the clergy that have their stoles and their clerical collars. All the clergy wear clerical collars, like that. So that's just a distinction. This picture here is the district superintendent. Of course, you can see me there in the background. The district superintendent, being a woman, is one of the steps they're doing. That's pretty rare still, but they're kind of moving forward that way of having women in leadership positions. Trying to remember
finally, 3 hours later plus, Dave has a chance to address the
I keep looking at the program, and I'm way down, like in the 13th or 14th item on the, and it just, I'm forgetting. Definitely not the main event, that's for sure.
That's good.
My message was really pretty simple. I told him, I asked some people, I said, well, what do they need to hear? I don't know the audience. I don't know where they're coming from or any of those things. And I was basically, there you can see Peacemaker's my interpreter there on the bottom corner. Tell them a little bit about our story of how we got connected to the church and encourage them that this is their church. We're partners in it, but it's their job to maintain it, to keep it up, and have it be a place of hospitality, that they welcome the stranger in. So that worked pretty well for us. And to let them know that God is at work in their lives, that this is evidence, this structure is evidence that God is at work amongst them and in their midst, and even far away from them. And so it worked pretty well. We had communion as part of the worship service. That's the clergy members waiting to receive communion from the bishop. Taylor had his first shot of communion wine, which it wasn't Welch's, so just put it that way. He goes, Dad, that kind of burned. Yeah. There you go. Nancy is the lady standing next to me, the other American lady. She was doing some women's teaching, like women's retreats and conferences to help educate more of the laity. Some of the folks from the Kabbalah Church were not present at the dedication. They were having a national women's conference, so some of their ladies were there, and they were also having some kind of youth conference there, so it was unfortunate. I mean, really, we couldn't tell who was a member and who wasn't. It was a lot of people there. My stole, just a quick story about my stole, was actually made in Sierra Leone. I bought that in the bishop's office the last time I was there. And the district superintendent wore the same one. Oh. Fashion amongst the clergy. Oh, there you can see the letters. That's actually a pretty good shot.
Yeah.
He found the meal. It wasn't hard for him to find. They fed everybody afterwards, which was really kind of interesting. The bishop ran the show. He was the lead celebrant. And we're getting about done. He said, now we have a meal for everybody, and we're going to make sure everybody gets a meal, because I think what he didn't want to do is stampede the limited scarcity, and this is our chance to have a meal. So they fed everybody through the primary school and did that. A great day, and just a fabulous day.
That's the end of the pictures, Dave. That's what we have.
Okay. Questions that you all have. I mean, anytime you see, that's It's always a bit of a scattered shot. You know, we came back with about 800 pictures, so, you know, there's always things you left out and those kinds of things. Yeah. Yes. He was, yeah. Paramount
Yes,
Chief's a Muslim.
Paramount, yeah, he was a Muslim. In fact, one of the interesting things is the bishop asked halfway through the service, you know, want to thank our Muslim friends for being here, and said, would you please rise? And probably 25% of the people that were there stood up. So about 25% were Muslims.
And just culturally speaking, you know, we hear stories of militant Muslims in areas of the world where Muslims are very, you know, extremist and violent and things like that. That never seemed to be an issue where we were. I think the people, they don't identify their faith as their main thing that they're identified with. Probably they'd identify with what tribe they're from or what area of the country they're from, and then their religious faith would be maybe a little further down on that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Elaine, please.
I think John and I were just buzzing here. The Paramount Chief did go to school in the United States for a while, around Washington, D.C. Yeah, Georgetown. And during the war, his father became very, very ill and was going to die. And so he was summoned that he is next in line and he must return home. And so he was airlifted back into Somalia because it was too dangerous
To take the roads, yeah.
to go by roads and etc.
Well, it's too dangerous to go by those roads at any time. I mean, those things are, it's terrible.
And so our friend, Hope Law, that has been at church here many times, had met him when he was in the U.S. And so it was fun to see him for the first time in Kamala.
The young man who was our driver, the man in the blue shirt that had the one picture, he's the son of the Paramount Chief, and I believe it's the southeastern, one of the southeastern provinces or districts. And so, you know, one day he'll be the Paramount Chief of his region. So I don't know if I don't know about titles and things like that. I got a little lost on some of that, but a person who will be a person of authority.
We kept calling him Prince. You know, just for that.
Hey, it's who you know.
Paige,
We'll be back.
Paige, did you have a question?
They had the pews made in Freetown. I don't know who they contracted to have them made, and then they shipped them in like a big furniture truck. I'd say maybe an 18 or 24 footer. That was one of the things they did on Saturday. So they were handmade. Yep. One of the things, you know, we raised the initial $50,000, and then the bishop said, I think we might have built the church too small. You know, if you had more money, we could build a bigger church. And we had maybe another $3,000. We had a little bit extra, but not a lot. So we sent him the check and said, here's some more money. You do with it what you wanted. This is all the money this is it. And they needed furnishings. They needed the altar and the pulpit and the pews and all that. And I think they used that money for the furniture. Yeah. I don't know where. Yeah, that never really came up. I don't know where.
No, it didn't.
I don't know where the bathroom is.
Don, based upon the needs that you saw, or all the visits of the places, did you see, what do you think is next for our church based upon what their needs are?
There are gobs of them there. I mean, it's really low-hanging fruit in that sense. There's just so much. You can pick almost from anywhere. The orphanage needs food. He really needs food. We'll probably hear a little bit from the bishop's office about a parsonage, and that's a real key, for Pastor Daniel to help grow his church. He lives quite a ways away, and he needs to get closer. So that's a need.
One of the questions, anytime you're dealing with this kind of setting, you have two different areas of need. You have relief, food, medical, those kinds of things. Basic human need, right? Shelter, clothing, food, that. And then you have development. If we invest in it long term, it will continue to help the people develop. That'd be like education, schools. So then the question becomes, well, is there one more valuable than the other? Food is important. You got to have food, but that feeds you for today. Are your dollars better spent to, build a school or some kind of facility or something like that? That gets to be, I think, a discernment issue of what do we sense God calling us to do.
Yeah.
The needs are great. No one can fulfill all the needs. It's never going to happen. So then it becomes just how do you, do your best with what you have. Sarah. Yeah. Thank you.
Please.
I'm going to ask about the theological school bishop's idea. How many pastors would be eligible and interested in that?
I don't know if he's even gotten that far. Okay. I think right now it's in the, one of these days we're going to have a school. They have the land and they have the building. So that's, a couple steps in the right direction. But as far as the who would come and how would we pay for it and where would they live, I don't think he's even gotten that far yet. But he's forward thinking, which I like. Please. He presented to the youth group last night and he said, Dad, I've done this already. So, Taylor by nature is an introvert, so he's not the most talkative kid even when he's around people he knows. So he was kind of shy. He's an observer, which, when you go into a foreign country, that's not the worst posture to have because you can kind of observe and see how they do things and then kind of imitate and mirror what they do. Once he started getting around the kids, he warmed up a little bit because let's face it, kicking the soccer ball around kind of cuts cultural barriers just down to nothing. He did well with the food. People always ask about the food. Taylor perked up around supper time, so, it's all right. There were times I think he was a little overwhelmed by just the volume of people and just the travel and those kinds of things. But I think that's pretty common for any cross-cultural experience. It's just you get, 2 days ago you were sleeping in your own bed and then 2 days later you're in the middle of National Geographic. Really. So on the whole, he did really well with it. He didn't complain too much, and there's an endurance to a trip like that where there's times it's like, hey, we've got to drive 3 more hours. Just buck up, because he did. Me too.
He actually did great through the service. I was sitting right next to him, and he really did well through the service. The other thing I noticed was with the kids. He was shy, but the kids weren't.
Yeah, they come right up to him.
They would come to him, and he responded very,
He liked to take pictures of them. They loved to have their pictures taken.
Yeah.
And so, he had the camera, and he'd snap their picture. And then the great thing about digital cameras now, you just turn around and show it to them, which they think is just a kick.
Yeah, they go crazy with that.
Usually the person whose picture you take, they look at it and stare at it because it's like, is that me? And everybody else around him is laughing because, they're getting a kick out of the person's response. So he liked to take the pictures. He said after the church service, he said, well, I took some pictures and there were some kids and then they just started following me. He said, they just started following me. And I'm picturing this great big giant teenage kid from America and he's got all these, little packs of kids along with him. But I think he liked that. I think he was thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah. One of the other things that I experienced was I got a lot of hugs, which surprised me a little bit until I realized that they know Les Law, and Les is bald, and Les has a white beard and
glasses,
and I was mistaken for Les Law a half a dozen times, and I had these people come up and give me big hugs, and it was kind of neat, I didn't mind going around being Les Jr.
Les and Hope told me this on our first trip, and it's really sunk in as kind of a guiding principle. They said, we as Americans are so used to, we were enculturated that the task is the key. What are we going to do when we get there? Because we want to build things and we want to do be productive. We're only there for a short time. She said, 90% of your work is done the moment you show up because you're there. That's it. It's encouragement. It's a sign of hope. They remember they're not forgotten. One and done, that's pretty easy. People come and they have their kind of tourist missionary experience, and that's it. It was a great experience for me, and we did some good, but, don't give them a second thought. Boy, that second time you come back, and of course for Hope and Less, the 20th and 30th time they come back, they bring you in as part of the family. You're like their long-distance relatives from America that come. And it was nice to have that reciprocal relationship with the bishop. He's come here a couple times, and it wasn't like you were visiting strangers. It was just people friends you hadn't seen for a while. And that was a wonderful part of it. There's always that sense of, well, I hope I don't say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. But, think about it in your perspective. If you had somebody from Sierra Leone come and visit you, you'd kind of expect them to not exactly know what to do or which fork to eat with or those kinds of things. But it doesn't really matter. You're there. And you're there for a Christ's sake, a kingdom-building project. Very gracious, very open and hospitable. So in that way, we did good just by being there. And any other things we do while we're there is, just that much more.
My granddaughter, who's here today, reminded me of, she wanted to know if I had a picture of the little girl. And I didn't. On the pictures we pulled out, I didn't. But I had an experience that, it's my last story. We had a lot of stories, but this is my last one. I'm not going to go through another one. But as people were coming up to the church, you'd see groups of people come up. And there was an opening between these groups of people, and there was one single little girl, about the size and the age of my granddaughter here, 8 to 10 years old. Very neatly dressed. I mean, just cute as a bug's ear. And she was all alone. And I took her picture a couple times. And then she came up to me and said, I'm here to see the service. I want to see the service. And I said, well, that's good. Come on in. Well, you could see the crowd there. She wasn't getting in. Plus, she was a little kid. So every time she tried, shh, you guys got to get out of here because it's for adults. It's what one of the ladies kept telling him, which is probably the wrong message, but not probably, that's the wrong message. But I ended up going outside. Frankly, there was a period in the service that I had an opportunity to go outside and look at what was out there. There were 100 people out there, and she was among them. And then she came back to that side door and was inching in with the other kids and was told to get out. And I grabbed her and set her down on my chair. She spent 3.5 hours sitting there, very attentive, absorbed it all. I would get up to take a picture, and she'd grab my program to have it, to hold it for me, and I'd come back, and then she'd move over, and I'd sit down, and I'd get up again, and she kind of felt, pretty good about it because she would show the program to a couple of the kids, but then she'd make sure she'd get it back when I came back, and we spent the whole service, or the last actually 2/3 or 3/4 of the service, she and I sitting there, and kind of broke my heart actually, but I'll never forget. I want to see the service. And she was all alone, no parents around. So
Better end on that story.
I think so. That's my last story. I'm done.
That's a closer. Thank you all for coming. We can stick around if you have just individual questions for us, but keep up the good work.